Nyos was a small village in the northwest of Cameroon, much like this one. The villagers lived quiet lives which were marked only by their traditional festivals. However, during the night of the 21st of August, 1986, something happened which was to change the villagers' lives completely. It was here, at Lake Nyos, at around 9 o'clock on the evening of Friday the 21st, that the trouble started. There was an explosion in the heart of the lake which released a cloud of gas. The cloud swept over the surrounding villages, swallowing up everything in its path, killing those who slept and those who remained awake. No one was spared. It did not take long to establish that this gas was in fact CO2, carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is not toxic, but it is heavier than air. As the cloud descended into the valleys, it displaced the oxygen, causing nearly 1,800 people to die of asphyxiation in less than an hour. 9 years later, the lake, situated in the crater of an old volcano, seems quite calm. But 200 meters down, below the surface, a massive quantity of gas still remains. Lake Nyos is, in fact, a huge time bomb. The danger zone has been evacuated, and the houses in the area have been destroyed to prevent the survivors coming back. A group of French scientists believe they have found a way of getting rid of the gas in the bottom of the lake. Their method has been christened the organ pipes of Nyos. They have mapped out the whole operation on paper, but need to test their theory on site before they can set up a system which will rid the lake of gas definitively. It's a risky undertaking. It is March 1995, the end of the dry season. It is very hot. Dust forms into eddies, swirling across the parched landscape. Lake Nyos is situated high up among the mountains. A track has been beaten out to it by bulldozer so that the 5 tons of equipment needed can be brought up to the camp. It is a particularly difficult area to reach. The operation is going to involve about 40 people for a period of more than 4 weeks. Although everything has been planned down to the last detail, the scientists anticipate that they will encounter a good few practical problems. They cannot be sure of succeeding. The head of the team is Michel Halvax from the University of Savoie. It was he who originated the organ pipes project. The disaster had initially provoked a fierce controversy amongst the scientists throughout the world. Several different theories were put forward about its cause. Some thought that the disaster originated in a volcanic eruption, while others believed that gas had accumulated in the lake gradually. The local inhabitants gave vague and contradictory accounts of what had happened, which did not help to confirm either theory. The chief says that before the disaster, you could see trees in the lake, in the middle and all around the banks. That means the lake has a different depth now compared with what it was before. And he says that when they heard the noise, it was as if the ground shook, and the water swept over to one side of the lake, so that those who were watching thought at first that a herd of cattle had rushed down into the lake center. In the evening, he saw a mist that seemed to be colored red, as if there was a fire. We now know that the carbon dioxide comes up through hydrothermal springs in the bottom of the lake and is dissolved in the water. An enormous quantity of gas can be dissolved in a liquid if it is under high pressure. The deep waters at the bottom of Lake Nyos are under pressure, and so over many years a huge amount of carbon dioxide accumulated. If this water then rises towards the surface, the pressure drops, and the gas can no longer remain dissolved. It forms into bubbles and is released into the atmosphere. Disaster struck at Lake Nyos because several hundred million cubic meters of gas were released all at once. The lake literally exploded. The idea behind the organ pipes of Nyos is beautifully simple. It consists of reproducing the natural phenomenon, but in a controlled way. To do this, the scientists are going to sink a pipe into the lake. A motorized pump will suck up water from the bottom of the lake, which contains a large amount of dissolved gas. As soon as the water starts to move up the pipe, bubbles will appear, and these will rise towards the surface. As they rise, they will pull up after them more water from the bottom, which will in turn produce more bubbles. Once the system is set in motion, the pump will no longer be needed and can be turned off. At the surface, the pipe will produce a fountain of water and gas rising tens of meters high, which will expel the carbon dioxide into the atmosphere in harmless quantities. But certain unknown factors remain, like whether the pipe will resist the pressure. The scientists' greatest fear is that they will suffer the same fate as the sorcerer's apprentice, that they will lose control of the experiment and cause another disaster. For this reason, bottles of compressed air are kept on hand throughout the experiment.
Bon, tu te baisses, quoi. Tu te baisses.
Dis donc, c'est pas un peu lourd, là?
Hein? Quoi?
C'est pas un peu lourd pour toi, ça?
Il y a encore le jus, là.
Ouais, là, comme ça, sur la partie avancée. Mais alors, dans ce sens aussi, hein?
Jacques Grandjean is an engineer. It is he who has designed the main pipe following Michel Halbwach's specifications. It was a massive task, and it has taken him several months. Bernard Canet is responsible for setting up computer systems and gathering data. A carbon gas detector constantly monitors the air around the camp. It goes some way to reassuring the workers who themselves come from Cameroon. The whole country was shaken by the extent of the 1986 disaster. Before 1986, the lake had never been studied at all, but since then it has been under constant observation and scientists come often to make tests. The smaller tubes are called pan pipes. They function on the same principle as the organ pipes, though on a different scale. They were installed during a previous expedition whose aim was to measure the concentration of dissolved carbon gas in the water. This bunch of tubes was put in place in 1992, and the automatic siphon has kept on since then without stopping. So the principle does work. Once the organ pipes are put into action, there should be no reason for them to stop. The scientists have also installed equipment to measure and record information about the lake. The Nyos probe was put in place 4 years ago to test the temperature of the lake at different depths. The information it gathers is relayed direct via satellite to Yaoundé and Toulouse. Gregory Tanileke is a volcano specialist from Cameroon. He has been studying the lake for the past 9 years and is a leading authority on Nyos.
CO2 at the bottom of the lake continues to increase, and the rate is estimated now at 300 million cubic meters.
The main pipe will be made of material generally used for underground gas conduits. Bernard Cartigny oversees construction. The greatest danger would be if the pipe ruptured during the experiment. The different sections are therefore welded together. Jacques thinks that it will take about 3 weeks to build. That's a long time, and things won't be made any easier if they can't get the welding torch to work. It's either a faulty connection or the generator itself is unreliable.
Ah oui, il faut une bonne solution. Hein?
Moi avec ça, c'est
Still, Jacques is likely to be kept busy, since word has got around that there is a highly qualified technician on the site, and everyone has got something they want mended. Laurent brought his radio to camp to have something to listen to when off duty. But it's broken down, so he's come to see if Jacques can help him by soldering the broken wires. But Jacques wishes he had brought an amplifier, then they could have music for everyone to listen to. That evening, Laurent tests out his newly repaired radio and maintains that it works as well now as it ever did. Unfortunately, this year the rainy season has come early. This is going to make it harder to carry out the operation. The rain won't stop, and the mattress in Antoine's tent is already soaked.
Allez, hop, on y va. En avant. C'est bon?
The section of pipe which will be sunk to the bottom of the lake is assembled first. Various instruments of measurement will be fitted to the main pipe. The information they provide will help in constructing a definitive version of the organ pipe.
Alors ça, c'est le capteur.
Several gauges will also be installed to measure the rate of flow and the depth of the pipe. According to calculations made so far, the water jet should spout out of the pipe at 100 kilometers an hour.
Les rondeurs, ils sont. Et les rondeurs, les rondeurs, ils sont. Oui.
Ça va être moins beau quand on va mettre la fille.
Ça te laisse une petite place ici pour pousser. Ici, il va y avoir tous les tourets qui vont se dérouler avec les trucs devant.
Tu me le passes? Ouais.
On peut le mettre pour la batterie.
Nous, on vous attend alors en haut. Hein. Moi, je vous attends en haut, dans tous les cas.
Oui, on pas.
To work out the best place to set the main pipe, Michel is going to use a graphic sound scanner. This will take readings right across the lake and build up a picture of the lake floor.
Tu la vois, la station américaine? C'est un peu plus à bâbord. Hein. Vas-y. Ah, là, ça plonge, 50.
Et vous pouvez varier ça au fur et à mesure, Michel.
Pas plus vite, hein.
They gradually mark the contours of unseen ledges of rock which drop down suddenly to the bottom of the lake.
Ça y est, ça plonge. Hein. Voilà, ça plonge là. Il faut aller très lentement. Hein. Voilà, 90, c'est bon. Hein. Donc je fais un coup de marque.
Now they have to work out exactly where to establish the anchorage points which will hold the main pipe in the center of the lake. The sides of the lake drop sharply. There is very little room to move around. It is vital that the anchorage points should stay firm. It would be a disaster if the pipe started to float away while the experiment was being carried out.
Est-ce qu'on peut faire les resserrer? Voilà, les resserrer, mais avec quoi? Avec un autre morceau de câble?
They decide to add extra cables to make doubly sure that the anchorage points are secure. A squadron of soldiers has been detailed to maintain security at the camp. Both French and English are spoken in Cameroon, but Lake Nyos is in the English-speaking area, where there tends to be more unrest. The soldiers are a useful addition to the workforce as the operation gets underway.
Le premier point trip qu'on avait fait, on voulait savoir à quelle distance on était par rapport à la remontée du bord.
According to the scientists' estimates, Lake Nyos was formed about 500 years ago.
L'arrivée sur le fond parfaitement plat. Au Cameroun, je trouve une quantité de lacs d'origine volcanique.
In Cameroon, there are a number of lakes which have been formed by volcanic activity. When a layer of magma rises and comes into contact with water which has collected underground, it provokes a sudden eruption. The explosion cuts out a sharp crater with very sheer walls and a completely flat bottom. Lake Nyos is an absolutely characteristic example of this kind of explosion. It is 208 meters deep and only 800 meters wide. This high ratio of depth to width often leads to the trapping of dissolved carbon gases. Carbon gas can be found everywhere around Nyos, for example in these bubbling springs which are death traps for small animals. CO2 coming from deep in the earth is constantly being given off, and it lingers in hollows in the land. Many creatures like this bird which came down to drink die of suffocation. The concentration of CO2 is so high that it goes off the detector's scale of measurement. If anyone stays near these springs too long, they will pass out.
Good morning, Chief Native.
Although Cameroon is a republic, the tribal chiefs have conserved a certain amount of power. It is they who traditionally represent authority, and they are highly respected. This visit is on a quite official level. The scientific mission to the lake is a very important event.
Half don't left. So now they have this way, it don't bring unfairty.
The chief says he was absent when we arrived here.
The apparently inexplicable disaster has resurrected certain traditional beliefs in the area. But for his part, the chief is more interested in the technology being deployed on the lake, which he considers his own property. For the sake of ease, the pipe is assembled horizontally, floating out across the lake. It will measure 200 meters when completed.
Non, ça rentre là. Ouais, là tu vois, j'ai failli percer sur toute la tête. Bon, là je crois que c'est bon.
Je vais plus le tenir, il tient tout seul là.
Several kilometers of rope have to be drawn across the lake. These will serve to pull the rafts which will carry the pipe.
C'est bon.
Voilà, attendez un moment, j'explique aux militaires. Il s'agit de dérouler.
Bernard explains to the soldiers how to unwind the rope to avoid knotting it.
Tu vois, à 3, et non pas de passer par-dessus, parce que ça va faire des nœuds sinon.
Ok. On a déjà.
Bon, Michel, allez-y tout doux, à toi.
Ça va?
Oui, non, il faut se lever aussi au fur et à mesure.
The only way to communicate with the boat is by walkie-talkie. This exhausting task continues until the evening. But solving the problem of the carbon gas will not in itself remove all danger from Nyos. This is because the wall which seals off the lake to the north is weak. If it were to give, the waters would rush down into the valleys and flow on as far as Nigeria, threatening the lives of tens of thousands of people. Some of the team are going to go down and explore the outer side of the lake wall to assess its current state. This point is about 40 meters below the surface of the lake. The rock which makes up the wall crumbles easily, and water from the lake seeps through it. There are many hollows which weaken it still further. Information indicates that there are galleries as much as 15 meters deep cut into the rock wall, but it is not possible to get up to them. To check this, Michel is going to try climbing down from the top. But the cavities he finds are not particularly deep. The cords have now all nearly been put in place. The team are keen to finish. None of them has the same enthusiasm as they did at the beginning.
Viens là, viens par là. Viens là, la mettre là. Tournez. Il faut tourner, hein. Wow. Voilà, stop. Ça va? Attention, mon cul.
It is still not known what happened at the time of the disaster to cause the water-containing gas to rise. One of the most probable theories is that it was a landslide, but other possibilities have not been ruled out. Michel suggests that it's possible that after some very heavy rainfall, a large amount of cold water ran into the lake. Being denser than the rest, it sank and forced the water at the bottom, nearly saturated with gas, to rise. So the disaster may have been caused simply by a heavy equatorial downpour. That night, the team ran into their own problems with the weather. There was a massive storm, with hailstones the size of eggs. Not surprisingly, Jacob's tent has been blown down.
C'est quoi? Ça va? Ma maison est tombée? Ah! Oh là là, tout est tombé! Voilà, c'est bon. Qui doit laver la femme? Qui va dormir avec la femme? Je ne sais pas! Ma seule femme! Peut-être là-bas!
The rain stops as night sets in, but a few hours later, a gas alert is given.
Allez, tu prends. Voilà, tu me donnes.
The members of the expedition gather quickly on hearing the warning of a gas leak, and some don't even stop to dress. It seems that they are all there.
Il est quelle heure là?
Il est 2h.
3h moins quart.
3h moins quart.
Oui, on a simulé une alerte gaz.
It turns out that it was just an exercise organized by the army.
Ah, moi je croyais que c'était sérieux. Mais il faut faire des exercices, hein. C'est normal.
Enfin, est-ce que le bon réflexe c'était de monter ou d'aller vers les respirateurs?
Michel is told that the right thing to do was to go to the respirators.
La meilleure solution, c'est courir chercher le respirateur. Parce que moins d'erreur, je vais vous imputer. Très mal.
They are now halfway through construction. There are more and more points where measurements have to be taken, and therefore more and more cables and electric wires. This radio-controlled valve, situated in the middle of the column, can be used to stop the experiment. They'll have to rely on it to work if any problem comes up during the operation. The Spielenaut is a little radio-controlled submarine designed for exploring underwater caverns. It can dive to a depth of 400 meters. The pictures relayed are used not only to guide the submarine, but also to explore beneath the surface of the lake.
Stop. Bonjour.
The Spielenaut was originally brought along in order to check the pipe before the experiment was put underway. But Michel is going to take advantage of it to explore the inside face of the lake wall and try to see if it also has hollowed-out galleries. However, the amount of mud is likely to make things difficult.
Voilà.
And indeed, they don't see much at all.
La profondeur, elle ne peut pas être plus précise.
Vous voyez quelque chose, vous?
Non, pas vraiment.
The hamlet of Bois was spared from the effects of the 1986 disaster because it is protected by the surrounding hills. The Cameroon authorities rehoused survivors from the affected villages here, and the hamlet has now become a small town. But Bois is situated a long way from the roads, and its isolation is a problem. It is hard to establish trade, and the market is disappearing. Survivors of the disaster dream of returning to their own villages. They too are desperately hoping that the organ pipes of Nyos will prove a success.
So Jamanguela, Jerusalem, where nun kimantomba nunyambe amal nola,
This is a water sampler, which you send to the required depth with both ends open. Then you send a messenger on a sampling line, which triggers the automatic shutting of the sampler as such.
This apparatus is going to take a sample of water at the exact place where the mouth of the pipe is to be, to check what the current concentration of carbon gas is. As it comes back up, the CO2 will be released. It will be collected in the plastic bag situated on the side of the apparatus. By comparing the volume of gas with the quantity of water in the sample, it will be easy to deduce the concentration of dissolved carbon dioxide.
$150 meters already. Tu as senti un peu?
Un peu, mais...
Guided by the cable, the marker will go straight to its target.
Encore arrivé?
C'est arrivé.
Ok. Allez, on remonte.
The apparatus is quickly brought back up again. The plastic bag is well filled.
Tu es sûr que c'est pas un 10 litres?
Non.
Il est bien plein, hein?
The gauge shows that the amount of carbon gas in the lake has increased once more. Now each litre of water contains a phenomenal 8 litres of dissolved gas.
Allez.
On peut le poser là? Non, pas encore. Levez. Posez une minute. Allez, hop. Doucement. Descendez.
Ça y est?
Pas peur, docteur.
Tu m'amènes juste le bout et tu laisses tout suivre.
The pipe is finally finished, but it has taken longer to build than was originally planned. They now only have a few days in which to finish the operation.
Très bien. Vous patientez une minute.
Laisse-la prendre la forme. Mais je m'en occupe après de la câblerie. Laisse-la. Ah oui, d'accord.
Bah voilà.
Pas le bas d'abord.
Oui.
Tu es dedans?
Attends, tu t'accroches là-dessus,
Non, mais
Bernard.
vas-y là.
Pousse alors.
With the deadline approaching, everyone is feeling the pressure.
Mets d'abord les autres. Le seul là ne pourra pas t'aider.
Un seul suffit. Attendez d'abord. Poussez. Ah, voilà.
Pas le bas d'abord.
Oui.
The tent which housed all the electronic apparatus has just been carried away and swept into the lake by a gust of wind. Fortunately, the majority of the equipment was saved.
C'est toute la même bâche, hein. Michel, moi je l'ai vu partir, hein. Elle s'est levée comme ça et hop, elle s'est couchée. Parce qu'elle était tenue.
Luckily, it got caught on a tree. Otherwise, it would have been carried out into the middle of the lake.
Tu l'as vu aussi? Moi j'ai crié à Jacques, t'attends.
Et Michel était dedans, il faut
Michel.
Michel
Photographier Bernard qui se battait avec l'autre. Michel était dedans.
C'est bon, tu peux.
The tent had been badly damaged. It weighs over 200 kilos and it's going to be difficult to repair it.
Vous nous envoyez le bout et nous on attache la bout tirée.
Viens d'aller de l'autre côté.
Dans le bateau.
They try to pull it out of the lake, but even as they do so, it catches and begins to tear even more.
Bon, on remonte un petit peu.
Il y a la corde qui est calée là, la corde de l'autre côté là. Hop. Tenez pour là-bas. Allez hop. Hop. Allez. Alors.
Michel had been inside the tent and had had to dive out through the flap to escape. A second raft has been attached to the first. It carries the pump which will start up the jet of water, the main measuring equipment, and the radio control systems.
Accroche-moi ça. C'est le clé du ballast que tu veux? Ouais. Vas-y. De toute façon, attends, faut qu'il passe dedans. Ok.
Once all the sensors have been fixed in place, it will only remain to get the pipe into an upright position.
Bon, actuellement, cette colonne, elle flotte parce qu'elle est vide.
At the moment, the pipe is empty, and so it floats. We're going to get it to fill with water from the far end.
Le seul risque, c'est d'aller trop vite.
The only risk will be if we let it down too quickly. If that happens, it will pull down the raft we're on at the moment. That's the only risk. Then we might well damage the equipment. Getting the water spout into action is not in itself enough for the experiment to be successful. It is vital to gather the data provided by the sensors. This will be recorded on the raft, but that is not all.
Alors sur la colonne, il y a une douzaine de capteurs.
12 sensors on the pipe send data by radio signal. These will be picked up by the computer so I can see it all immediately. We will be able to see straight away whatever's happening.
J'ai la colonne au bout de ma corde là.
Finally, they can start trying to lower the pipe into the water.
Oui. Allez, en avant. Lève ton moteur là.
Jacques controls the amount of air which comes out of the column in order to limit its speed of descent. For some reason, Bernard is not yet getting a reading. The pipe has nearly reached the bottom of the lake. The message is relayed back to those waiting on the bank to stop letting out the cord.
Dis à la terre d'arrêter de lancer la corde.
Jacques knows he cannot afford to make any mistakes. The submarine will check all the radio control valves.
Ouais, quand tu veux. Non, je vais pas trop loin, je vais vers la colonne.
The team carefully check all the joints of the pipe.
C'est quoi ça? C'est une vanne ça, non?
Je vois pas encore. Si, c'est la vanne ça. Ça c'est le clapet anti-retour. Et ce qu'il faudrait, c'est arriver à voir l'axe de la vanne.
Remonte un peu, Romain, si tu peux.
Bah là, on la voit bouger là. Voilà, elle est fermée, on l'a vu au passage.
Elle est fermée? Bon.
Oui, elle était en train de se fermer.
Alors on se continue à descendre?
Oui, on peut descendre. On va passer doucement si vous pouvez.
Faut descendre.
Il reste plus qu'à aller voir le fond pour tagner les quais. Tu seras content, tu n'y es jamais allé?
The scientists have never seen the bottom of the lake up until now, so they are going to send the submarine down to get an idea of how it looks.
Just go slow.
Okay.
Wow. This is serious. Lots of sediments. Yes.
En fait, c'est les deux vallées, vers le...
Michel checks on the map the areas that were affected by the 1986 disaster. The Subum Valley to the north was badly hit, and Nyos was destroyed, as was an area out towards Char, over a distance of about 20 kilometers. Before attempting the experiment, they have to make sure that there is no one in the surrounding valleys. Even the camp personnel will be evacuated to the hills. Even though no one lives at Nyos anymore, many farmers still bring their cattle into the valleys. The land surrounding the lake is even planted with crops. The local inhabitants have absolutely no idea of the risk they are running. In contrast, those who have survived the disaster will never get over it.
Every person was jumping up and down. Some were running, escaping. On the street, they were falling down. Some were drunk. They could not even talk. They could not look up. All had to fall down. Myself, I fell down. Excretors coming out, vomiting. My sisters died. My own wife, married to 2 wives, they died. My children died, 6 children. So I'm a survivor with 2 children.
J'ai la vanne. Là, j'ai la vanne.
C'est bon. C'est bon, laisse voir.
Il faudrait que tu montes au camp et que...
Michel insists that all non-essential personnel are evacuated onto the hill. Jacques checks that they have the carbon dioxide detector with them.
Non, mais il faut qu'on le sorte, il faut qu'on le mette sur les tables.
Comme en Bretagne.
Mais t'as peur que ça se passe mal?
Oui, légèrement inquiet quand même.
Nevertheless, despite all the precautions, everyone is nervous.
Pas facilement. Alors là.
C'est bon. Ok. Bon, moi je vais monter.
C'est bon, on peut y aller.
On peut y aller.
Allez.
Là maintenant c'est le Nyos contrôlé. Voilà. Il n'y a plus de Nyos incontrôlé de 86.
À combien de temps avant que ça démarre?
10 minutes.
10 minutes. In 10 minutes it'll be working. That's if it starts up at 80 meters. Otherwise it'll take half an hour. No, I'm not going to worry because now it's really time things got underway.
La vanne latérale, ouvrir la vanne centrale et aspirer sur la colonne principale. À toi.
Ok, bon bah écoute, d'ici...
N'importe quand, je note à la seconde près, je m'en fiche.
Ouais.
Essayez de trouver une
D'ici 5 secondes. 3, 2, 1, top.
Et la température différentielle monte, enfin elle est moins négative.
They set off the pump and note the rise in differential temperature.
Non, non, pour l'instant je laisse tourner en haut. Bon, bah, je pense que d'ici 10 minutes on passe aux choses sérieuses. Hein.
In 10 minutes, things should be underway.
Elle ne bouge pas du tout? Parce que là, elle devrait monter à...
But 4 hours later, still nothing.
On n'a rien qui sort sur la colonne principale. Tiens, bah, jette un œil, Bernard.
Rien.
D'accord.
En tout cas,
Ce que je voudrais, c'est que tu regardes ce qui s'écoule de la pompe.
Oui, mais ça coule toujours. Mais avec, si tu veux, c'est intermittent. On voit bien qu'il y a du gaz déjà. Hein.
And the hours pass. Contrary to what had been predicted, the water jet has not set itself in motion. Michel tries to understand why. Jacques checks the radio control systems. Whether the jet will start up the next day depends on what Jacques can do now. The next day, despite trying the pumps in different ways, the water jet still does not start up. No one can understand why.
Et là, il a plongé profond le tuyau.
The pipe of the pump has been pushed well down, and it should really be working.
C'est sûr que c'est pas évident, hein?
And to cap it all, the weather is getting worse.
Voilà, comme ça.
In the afternoon, Michel returns to the platform to compare the composition of the pumped water in the main pipe with that sucked up by the pan pipes. But the bubbles indicate that gas is indeed being released.
One 134.0 and
22.9.
Yes.
Comment on peut expliquer que le niveau dans la colonne soit plus bas?
How can you explain the fact that the level in the column is lower? If the pump was putting out a lot, okay, but not given the relation of the diameters with this trickle that's coming out. It's true that not much is coming out of the pump.
Ah non, il y a plein de bulles. Il y a beaucoup de bulles. Mais par contre, en bas, normalement, avant...
Normally, before it gets underway, there should be a lot of bubbles and a rise in level. But there's no rise at all at the moment. By the end of the day, the water jet has still not started up. Nobody believes it's going to happen now. They have to face the facts. The operation is a failure. For Michel Halvax, this means months of work have been entirely wasted. The operation is over. They have to pack up today. But Michel won't resign himself. Though the others who are beginning to pack up are against it, he starts up the pump again in a final attempt to get the water jet underway.
Bon, je sais pas si je laisse tourner, moi. Oh, laisse-le. Laisse-le tourner.
Oh, leave it going. Michel is disappointed. Let him go on trying for another couple of hours. What time is it? It's only 1 o'clock. There is no more fuel, and so the pump will soon come to a halt. Michel is desperate. We can try once more. We have perhaps very little chance of success, but in my opinion we should take the whole of the main pipe out and take out the valve in the middle. It's the only explanation that there is something wrong in the middle. And then we should try again. Right now the pump is working very well, and that means within 6 hours we're sure of getting the jet underway. But I don't think Jacques wants me to try. No, if it doesn't work now, it'll never work. We'll never get funding to try again. Honestly, I think this is our last chance. We won't find the funding. And then do you realize how much effort has been made? At the moment, we've got a pipe and everything is ready, everything. No, but in a year's time, it won't be working. It'll rust, it'll deteriorate.
Oh, c'est extraordinaire. Ça, c'est extraordinaire.
Ça, alors, c'est le suspense.
Ça, c'est...
Ah, putain. Ça, alors, vraiment, ça arrive pile poil. Hein. Tu te rends compte? Au moment où on se barre,
Just as we're about to leave, just 5 minutes before we go, we disconnect the electronics and everything, and the jet spurts out. And what a jet, it's like the Fountain of Geneva.
Oh les mecs! Ah, ça s'effondre. Ah non, c'est génial. Il faut photographier.
Les données sont bonnes. Non, mais elles sont à 0,4 bar et c'est...
Moreover, Jacques is delighted with the data they are receiving.
La profondeur à moins 50 mètres, c'est 0,4 bar. Par contre, la température du bas, elle doit être pétée parce que... Ah mais non, 24 degrés, non, je me gourre. La température du bas, 24 degrés. La pression en UVAR était bonne. Hein? La pression est significative.
Michel, est-ce que tu peux nous faire un petit exemple?
They celebrate in traditional style. The jet rises to a height of 21 meters. The experiment has been successful. As soon as finance can be found, the organ pipes of Nyos will be installed definitively. 10 pipes will be set up, which will siphon off the gas from the lake within a few years. The local population will no longer live with this sword of Damocles suspended over their heads, and the farmers will be able to reclaim their traditional pasture.
Très heureux. Très heureux. Très, très heureux.
Beautiful fountain.
Ah ouais, ici content maintenant. Ça c'est très bon. Là, ici très content.